Good evening, everyone, and assalamu alaikum. Thank you all so much for giving your time and coming to listen to us today. I'm Khadija and I'm a member of the Bristol Islamic Society, and we're just going to go ahead and start. Thank you so much. We're really sorry for the delay and hope you have a great evening. So to start off, I'm just going to explain some words that you guys might be hearing tonight. I'll start with assalamu alaikum, and that's a welcome to say peace be upon you all, it's a greeting. And some other words that you might hear, just in case you don't know what they mean. Allah is the Arabic word for one universal God. Alhamdulillah means all thanks and praise be to Allah. And a hadith is a saying of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And inshallah means by the will of Allah. Example, something by the will of Allah will be successful. And mashallah is a gift from Allah, so that's like a complimentary thing. And lastly, you might also hear the word the Quran, and this is a revelation from one God to mankind, and it's revealed to the final Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And so we're going to go ahead. We're going to start the evening by some recitation from the Quran. So I'd like to invite Brother Abdelrahman, please. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإلى مدين أخاهم شعيبا قال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره ولا تنقصوا المكيال والميزان إني أراكم بخير وإني أخاف عليكم عذاب يوم محيط ويا قوم أوفوا المكيال والميزان بالقسط ولا تبخسوا الناس أشياءهم ولا تعثوا في الأرض مفسدين.
Thank you so much. And so now we're going to have an introduction by Sahar, and then have Abdelrahman come and introduce her, so that you know who she is.
Okay, assalamu alaikum everybody. I'm Abdelrahman from the University of Bristol Islamic Society Committee. Welcome, just another welcome to the event today. Just going to introduce Sahar, who's actually coordinated this event across the Southwest. She's part of the FOSIS Wales and West committee, and she's the Deputy Vice Sister there. Without further ado,
Assalamu alaikum. As you remember, that's peace upon you all. So my name is Sahar, and the question is, what is this evening about today? Why are you actually all here? I mean, I know the title is Trade Justice, but what does it really mean? To be quite honest, about a couple of years ago, I watched a program about how chocolate was made. And to be completely honest with you, although it was something quite known, it was a bit of a shock to my system. I just couldn't understand why is it that we live in a world where the products that we have is through exploitation of other people. And I thought to myself, there must be something I can do. And being human, you just sort of, you don't know what to do, you just kind of forget about it and you just move on. And to be honest with you, that's exactly what happened. I just moved on and I forgot about it. And then really recently, it's something that came up in my head again. This time it was really, I spoke about it with a couple of friends, and you know, it was really like bugging me. But again, I didn't really think to myself, I did want to do something, but I didn't really think to myself, okay, I will actually do something, although in my heart I really did want to. But coincidentally, doors just opened and I found people and organisations that actually had the exact same vision, that they did care and they do want to make a change. And even though it is quite a big problem in the world, that doesn't mean you don't do anything. you do something, even if it is the smallest thing. And during this process, what I did actually realise when I did speak to people was that a lot of people said, oh, we just don't know, oh, we don't really know about it, oh, we don't know what to do, and which is fair enough, like people genuinely don't know. But I think maybe some people have an idea, but because again they don't know what to do, they just don't do it, or they don't want to know, because if you don't want to know, if you ignore the problem, you just pretend it doesn't exist. And what today is really about is talking about just exploring the actual current situation, about what it is in the world, what is trade justice, is there justice, and what is our duty as people and as Muslims. Of course, it is a value that is shared by people, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're not, whatever your background. But I just really wanted to highlight what duty do we have from a faith background? Why is it our duty? And is it our duty? And is it an obligation? And what can we do? And so yeah, we're going to talk about the current situation, our duty from a faith perspective, and most importantly, like what can we actually do, like some action points. And hopefully, inshallah, by the end of this evening, you'll be more aware and you would want to do something, and you will do something, because I'm going to give every single one of you something, and every single one of you will do even the most smallest step, and you're going to know your intention as well, inshallah.
Hi everybody, it's great to be here. I feel I'm hiding behind the screen, so I'll try to be a bit taller. I'm Fair Trade Coordinator for Bristol, which means that I go into schools, businesses, talking about fair trade, trying to explain to people what it is and why it's so important. So it's fantastic to have the opportunity to come here tonight and do exactly that. Could I ask the lovely Malik to come and change onto my PowerPoint? That would be fantastic. Thank you very much. Whilst he's doing that, the Fair Trade Network is actually just a network of volunteers and businesses and charities and people that believe in fair trade. And you've got our winter newsletters that have been sort of scattered along the seats there. And if you do want to get involved, all the contact details are on the back, and we'd love you to be a part of it. So that might be an action thing you want to do later. Thank you. Do I just click to... Right, thank you. So, as has already been mentioned, the world that we live in is not fair, and we all know that. This is just an example that we still, even in 2012, have children who are working effectively as slaves or as indentured labour, where they don't go to school, they work incredibly long hours, they're kept in very bad conditions, often don't see their parents. Some of them are also treated very badly by their employers. And this is unbelievable, really, that in this day and age this still happens. But there's also an awful lot of other people who are working very, very hard at their job to produce things that we enjoy, such as coffee and chocolate and tea, and they can't even cover the costs that it is to produce that product, let alone pay anything for their children to go to school, or any of the things that we take for granted. So it's not fair, it's not a fair world, but we don't have to accept it, and there are things that can be done about it. And one of those things, one of the most effective ways, is actually to buy fair trade. I hope most of you have seen this fair trade symbol before. Is that familiar to most people? Yeah? Yep. I don't know if you know what it's meant to stand for. Does anybody know what the mark is meant to represent, the actual blue, green and black mark? It's supposed to actually be a person. If you look at the black circle in the middle, it's supposed to be someone's head, and the other black wavy bit is their arm coming up like that. And the blue is the sky, and the green is the earth. Everybody see that? Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of yin and yang type of thing, but it's actually meant to just be a person waving. So that's what the fair trade mark symbolises. But what does it actually mean when you see that on a pack of coffee or in a chocolate bar? What does fair trade actually mean? Well, it's a guarantee to us as consumers that the producers of whatever product it is are getting a fair price. And at the moment there are 7.5 million people, producers and their families, directly benefiting from fair trade. Although hopefully as I explain a bit more, you'll see that the impacts are actually much, much wider than that. but that's the number of farmers that are directly involved in the fair trade system. So what does it actually mean then? Well, you probably know all about world market prices and how things like commodities like coffee and chocolate, the prices can be quite high one month and then they can just plummet. And we've seen terrible times where producers have actually seen their income, more than halved, only a third of what they used to earn for exactly the same product, exactly the same quality, because of the way the markets work, and with people buying and trading and doing all sorts of things with these commodities. And they don't have any of the trade subsidies that we in Europe have. So people can be earning a perfectly fair wage for a commodity, and then somebody will come along and say, no, I'm sorry, we're only going to offer you $50 a tonne this time. But it was $200 last time you came. Oh, well, that's not my fault, that's just what the price is at the moment. So what fair trade does is it works out what a sustainable price is for people to have a fair life. So for example, for coffee, it might be that the price is set at $2 a sack. And what that means is that when the world price goes higher than that on the world market, they will get that higher price. But if it dips down, which happens all too often, and has happened again actually this week, fair trade acts as a safety net to make sure that people still have that minimum wage that we all take for granted that can cover the basic costs of living. So that's what fair trade provides, is that safety net. On top of that, on every fair trade product that you buy, there's something called a social premium, which is a bit extra that goes to the whole group of farmers, normally in a cooperative style arrangement. And it's up to them to decide how they want to invest that money to improve the lives of their communities. And that's what I said about the impact of fair trade being much wider than just those immediate farmers that are involved in the fair trade system. So for example, here we can see a tea factory that's put in a health clinic, they've put in a new road to enable people to get to markets, they've also added to their secondary school. All of those things have been paid for by the fair trade premium. So the impacts across the whole community, lots of villages around, is absolutely huge, be it clean water, be it schooling, be it healthcare. And that's what fair trade aims to do, is just constantly increase the standard of living and improve the lives of farmers and those that live in that surrounding area. The other great thing about fair trade is to get the fair trade certification, farmers need to organise themselves usually into cooperatives or into joint bodies of some sort. And the good thing about that is that it means that every single person involved with fair trade has a voice, because it has to be up to every single farmer to vote for how they spend the social premium, how the business is going to be developed. Everybody receives training. So it's not that you just have a few people at the top making the decisions, and actually the farmers at the bottom are still completely powerless. Everybody learns, everybody is empowered, and a lot of people can then go off and form their own businesses and not be so dependent on simply on one crop and simply being at the whim of whoever's leading that. And that also has a fantastic knock-on effect for women, because in many societies it would traditionally be the men that had the power, the men that had the money to spend, and on the fair trade that is not the case. Every single person that's involved, and often it's sort of 30–40% of women, they all have an equal voice and equal part to play, and that's been hugely empowering for women in many of these countries. Fair trade also protects the environment, which is absolutely crucial given the times that we live in and the need for sustainability and the need to protect rainforests. For a group of farmers to get the fair trade certification, they have to meet very high standards on not using excessive pesticides, not using excessive amounts of water, converting as many things as possible to things like solar power and water power, not cutting down trees. So all of those things have to be met, which is brilliant. So if you do believe in green and sustainable living, fair trade is actually a really natural extension of what you're trying to do there. So fair trade gives small farmers a much stronger position in world markets. It gives them information about what's going on. You can imagine if you're in a small rural community and somebody rolls up with a van to buy your commodity, you would have no idea if you're being offered a fair price. Fair trade links you in with what's happening in the world. People are having mobile phones, people know and can gain access on the internet as to what's actually going on and negotiate and bargain a lot more effectively. Being part of the fair trade system also gives people access to microfinance, which, as I said before, allows people to diversify, not be so dependent on one crop, allows them to set up small businesses within their own communities, so they're not going to be so dependent on exports, but it can empower their local communities to do more. Obviously, it also involves improved working conditions because the health and safety conditions have to be good and standards have to be met. And very importantly, given our first slide, there is no child labour in fair trade. You cannot get a fair trade certification if children are involved. It's different if you help out your parents in the holidays, but it can't stop children from going to school. It can't be that level of child labour. So that's what it means if you buy something with a fair trade mark on it. All of those conditions have to be met, and you know that if you buy a fair trade product, all of those things are true, and that's the benefits to the farmers, which are huge. So how else can fair trade, buying something that's fair trade, help prevent slavery? We've got a lot of evidence from fair trade communities and farmers that by having fair trade, it actually prevents people from going to cities in search of work, because it makes working the land viable. You know, if you're in for example, the Windward Islands, a lot of banana farmers in the Windward Islands, most of the young people were actually leaving because there wasn't anything that they saw in banana farming that would make them want to stay. People were losing money, people were becoming desperate. In India there was high levels of suicide amongst cotton farmers for the same reason. There was nothing to keep younger people. With fair trade, it gives people actually a good business, a good reason to stay in their local communities. They're not going to go into cities, live in shanty towns in dangerous conditions, be in danger of being either taken away or taken as indentured labourers. So by actually keeping people in their own communities, that really strengthens them and prevents them from being trafficked. As I mentioned before, it empowers women, and it's often women, of course, that are being open to being trafficked and to being taken into slavery. And it also tackles many of the root causes. People sell their children out of complete desperation. They don't do it because they want to. It's because they can't afford to feed other children. If you're tackling the roots of poverty and actually enabling people to have a dignified life and earn a fair wage from what they're doing, they don't need to send their children to work in terrible conditions. And obviously it does prevent things like the child labour that we still see, particularly in things like areas like cotton, in countries like Uzbekistan, and that will not happen under fair trade cotton rules. This is just to show the range of fair trade products there are. I'm sure you all know about tea, coffee, bananas, but there's probably quite a lot of things up there that you might not know you could get as fair trade. So there's all sorts of dried fruit, there's footballs, there's biscuits, clothing, wine, all kinds of things that you can find now with the fair trade mark. And I would urge you really to look for as many products as you can and include them in your regular shopping, because it's only by more of us buying fair trade that the big companies are going to be listening and taking note, just like they have already. Why else would people like Cadbury's have committed to changing their whole range to fair trade? Because we as consumers were saying, we want you to trade fairly, this is important to us. When fair trade started out, it was just 3 products that nobody had ever heard of. And the people at the Fair Trade Foundation, who were the ones that sort of coordinate fair trade in the UK, went to Tesco and spoke to the head of Tesco to say, we'd really like you to stock fair trade, please. And they turned around and said, well, why would we do that? It's just a bunch of yoghurt-eating vicars that are interested in fair trade. Why would we want to stock it in our supermarket? And now, of course, they have had to join in and they have had to sell fair trade, and many of their own brand products are now fair trade because ordinary consumers like us have gone along and said, this is what we want and we will buy it because this is what we believe in. So the more we buy, the more companies will come on board with it, and the cheaper it will be for us to buy it as well, because of course, you know, the more people that come on board, mass market will actually bring the prices down. So that's just an example of the range of products. Bristol University. Bristol became a fair trade city in 2005, and we're now one of the leading cities in the UK, partly because we do have a paid coordinator post, which most fair trade towns and cities don't, so we've been very lucky. As I mentioned already, we have a fair trade network, which anybody is welcome to join, and we would love to see you along to any meetings, and all the contact details for us are on the back of the newsletters there. Fair Trade Fortnight is something that happens in the whole of the UK every year, and next year it will be from the 25th of February to the 10th of March. And that might be something that you want to recognise as a society by holding an event, by trying to raise awareness about these issues a bit more, either in your group or on campus. campus generally. It's a great time because there are a lot more things around in stores with special offers on, and people might be a bit more aware of it. So it is a good time to really get on board with fair trade, and that might be something you do on an annual basis. So in terms of what Saha was saying about everybody going away with an action point, do sign up to our newsletters, do follow me on Twitter if you want to, make your society a fair trade society, raise awareness of something to do with fair trade and Fair Trade Fortnight, and buy fair trade yourselves. Make that commitment that even if it's just one thing that you can afford, it might not be that you can afford to buy everything fair trade, but if there's one or two things that you can get, make a commitment to buy them, because it really does make such a difference to the farmers. Malik, could we play the DVD? That would be great. And then if you've got any questions, I'll take them then.
Hello, welcome to Ghana.
Ghana is cocoa, and cocoa is Ghana. Fair trade has had a lot of impact on our farmers. There are projects to show the kind of impact that has gone on. There are about 45,000 farmers involved in the proper cocoa fair trade.
They use the fair trade premium, for instance, to invest in their business, alternative livelihood. Part of the premium is also used to provide scholarship to the children of the farmers, whom otherwise wouldn't have been able to have the opportunities. And then in the larger community, they provide schools and other social amenities like borehole for the benefit of the entire family and the community as a whole.
Assistant Abrabum Bibri, I remember Yenina so. Say me what Tommy. Say the chair first, and then query mine, and then you query bed in Wawa Topa. To the woman of the Aji. Better Basson, a woman who said there is the digger. I might never also, I from a man school never told you to come and buy a one.
A lot more people are beginning to understand or see the benefits of the fair trade in the communities.
I'm a man, Japan, to say, Mokawaro Crab, maybe no business because we used to come to meet me, a man. We are
At the moment, we are getting about 8% of our total product being sold to fair trade market, and we hope to increase it. That will really help the farmers enjoy the fruit of their labor.
First trade could be a Alpoame, Amaminia, Sika, Edisham, Mabrabo, Menemema, and Onyamisuto, Ediani, Edi.
Any questions about anything I've said? It's very bright suddenly. Yes, sorry.
I guess when I heard about fair trade earlier this year, I was reading lectures that were being given, and there is a situation where there is abuse of the involved, and it was a chocolate company. How can you ensure that? There is going to be that kind of thing, and obviously, the more people are getting into it, inshallah, everybody wants to stop exploitation. The more people are going to want to abuse that thing with fair trade and mobile stuff, and it's fine. So I think it was mentioned, but I don't know more about it. This was chocolate. It was a Cadbury. But what the lecture mentioned was Nestle, and they set up a fair trade factory in one part of the world. Everybody's right to be,
Absolutely, there was a report about some abuses that were happening, and actually some children were being employed. I think that's there was a television programme about it. That was immediately investigated, and the company had their trade mark removed immediately until they could meet the standards. With any system, it's not going to be entirely perfect, and that was, an awful thing that happened. But every single company that's in the fair trade system, every single cooperative, is investigated every year by the Fair Trade Labelling Organisation, or Fair Trade International, as it is now, to check that they are meeting the standards. Now, in between those annual checks, other things could happen, but they are checked very rigorously, and most people that are in the fair trade system honour the fair trade system because of what it gives them, and they don't want to then go against what the certification means and go against the rules because they don't want to lose it. So that is very rare that that happens, but that isn't to say that it hasn't happened, but as I say, it's incredibly rare. In terms of Nestlé, this is always the problem when something starts off as a sort of very idealistic, tiny system and kind of balloons, which is what has happened with fair trade, which is a great thing because it means that now millions of people are benefiting rather than just a few thousand. But as soon as you get the big companies on board, they might start playing with things a little bit. Now Nestlé have got the fair trade mark for the Kit Kat, yeah, because the amount of cocoa that they buy on fair trade terms is the amount that they use in Kit Kat. But none of their other products are fair trade, pretty much. So it's up to you, really, if you decide that you want to support Nestlé or not. Personally, I choose not to buy Nestlé because I've boycotted them forever because of the baby milk thing from ages ago and whatever else. But you must make your own decisions as a consumer, what you do. But that's the truth about them, that they buy a certain amount of fair trade and none of the rest of it is. Now, I prefer to support companies that are doing a lot more for fair trade. So be it a supermarket like the Co-op, a clothing shop like Marks and Spencer's, or a pure 100% fair trade brand like Tradecraft, like Divine Chocolate, like Zaytoon that we're going to hear from later. I would prefer to support those companies that we know are completely committed to fair trade. But they're smaller, and on the whole they're not going to meet the mass market. So the great thing about people like Nestlé and Cadbury's coming on board is that it shows that it's important enough for them to take notice and to want to be part of it. And the more we push them, the more products will then be rolled out to the fair trade line and the more producers will benefit. Now, since that DVD that I just showed you, when the farmer said that 8% of their beans are sold on fair trade terms, because of Cadbury's coming on board, it's now 45%, which is brilliant because that's so much more money coming into their communities. But that's still only 45%. They've still got 55% of their cocoa being produced under the same excellent conditions, meeting all the certification standards, but they just have to sell any old price, whatever they can get. And there are certified tea plantations, for example, that are selling 2% of what they produce on fair trade terms because there's not enough of a market. So we need to be buying more and we need to be telling people to buy more so that the farmers that have worked so hard to reach the fair trade standards can actually sell more on fair trade terms. I hope that answers your question.
Are you suggesting that Cadbury's are alongside fair trade?
Sorry, it's just...
Are you suggesting that Cadbury's chocolate, which is a massive market, is fair trade generally with some products? Or?
It's, at the moment it's only a percentage of what they do, much more than Nestlé, but it's only a percentage because it's just dairy milk and buttons and, you know, but it's increasing and they have got a commitment to increase year on year, which is great, so long may that continue, but it's not 100% at the moment. Any other questions? Yes.
So I have a question about the whole bureaucratic process of fair trade. Do you not think, well, I feel that it sort of takes away from the initial ideas of fair trade and what it started out to be, because you've got producers who have to go out looking for solar panels or these certifications. How do you avoid that kind of criticism?
But they don't have to look for solar panels, so I just mentioned that as an example. I'm sorry if that was misleading. There's training and there's help to enable groups of farmers to come into the fair trade system. Now there are still some very tiny, small-scale farmers that haven't been able to get fair trade certification because obviously, like you say, there is a cost implication and there is, it does involve groups of farmers coming together, which isn't always possible. There are some smaller companies that we say that have a direct trading relationship with people like that, and that's what we call fairly traded. So it doesn't have the mark on it, but it's still fairly traded, and you might see some companies around that do that, and actually some Tradecraft products, and that's a 100% fair trade company, but not every single thing that they sell has got the mark on it because they do work with a lot of small-scale producers. And other goods like some crafts and jewellery and handicrafts, you can't get the fair trade mark for those. So they might be fairly traded with, just a direct trading relationship, they still pay the fair amount, they still get an extra to invest in their communities, but it won't have the mark on it. It will say fairly traded instead. So that's still going, but it's just in a slightly different format.
Well, I have a second question. So obviously you want to implement the whole fair trade in some of the mass markets, so like in big supermarkets and whatever. But does that not cause a problem when it comes to producing? Supposing bananas, obviously the big supply chains would want a massive supply that's constantly coming in. But the whole idea of fair trade is for small producers, and you're probably thinking of actually moving on to plantations. How do producers feel about that? Because obviously not all producers can provide such a big market.
Plantations have always been included in part of the fair trade system because so much of bananas and tea particularly are produced on plantations. So if they were left out of the system, that would disempower thousands and thousands of workers from being able to be part of the fair trade system. So there's a slightly different set of rules for plantations, just because obviously they're not in the same cooperative model, but they still have to be allowed to join unions, they still all get a vote in how the money is spent, but it's just a slightly different way of forming themselves to the cooperative system. So there is still the opportunity for people on plantations to be part of fair trade, which I think is really important. Any other questions? Let me give the floor to the next speaker. I feel I've hogged the microphone, and if there's anything else that comes up later, I'll be happy to chip in.
I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. Muhammad was his final messenger. I believe in all the messengers from Adam until the final man Muhammad. Peace be upon them all. It's an honour to be here. It really is. Inshallah, what I would like to do today is look at things not only from in most fields, what you have are constants that don't change, and then you have other things that are subject to context, that are subject to circumstance and other factors, and these things change. And in Islam, these are subject to ijtihad, and ijtihad means that you strive to the best of your knowledge and do the best research possible to get the best solution within the values and within the structure of Islam. And as such, you can have different opinions, and you can have mutually exclusive opinions as well, and they're all acceptable so long as they're following the correct methodology. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, and the Quran is the book that we as Muslims believe is was sent with Muhammad, peace be upon him, and it is the final book from God. Let me just read to you verse 75 in the chapter of An-Nisa, woman. And what is wrong with you, that you do not strive in the cause of Allah, and for those weak, ill-treated and oppressed amongst the men and children, the women, and children, who cry, our Lord, rescue us from this town, whose people are oppressors, and raise for us from you people, or one who will protect, and raise for us from you one who will help. So, in this verse, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is blaming us, saying, look, there are people, while you're sitting down doing nothing, comfortable, who are praying for a way out from the injustice and the oppression that they're going through. So we kind of put that as one factor within the decision-making process. We also know that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that a believer, a strong believer is more beloved to Allah than a weak one. And in both there is good, and in both there is good. But the strong one is more beloved to Allah. That's another factor within this decision-making process. We also know, and it's also narrated to us, that Jesus did a very similar thing, where someone went to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he said, help me to do this and that, and he gave him an axe, and he said, this is how you earn money. Go cut down some wood and bring it so people can use it. And we know Jesus, the whole thing saying about teach a man how to fish as opposed to just give him a fish every day or two or three, however much he needs. So there's the factor of education as well. Now, in Islam, buying and selling, there are different contracts, financial contracts. So there's no such thing really as Islamic finance. It's more Islamic transactions of finance. So no such thing as Islamic finance as such. Actually, most of the models today that you find in banks have nothing to do with Islamic finance. It's a different story. also part of fair trade though. So in order to buy and sell, this has to happen an taradin. It has to happen with mutual consent, with mutual consent and happiness. That I sell you something whilst I'm happy selling it to you, and that you buy something from me whilst you are happy buying it from me. So that's another factor that we put into this research or into making a decision. So I'm going to put my neck out here. I'm going to be a little bit different. I'm speaking here to an audience of educated people that are pursuing further education, whether that just be an undergraduate or further is not an issue. But you're smart people, go into uni, whether you continue or not, whether you fail or not, at least you got here, right? So I don't want to just stop at this is what's already. I think the lady before me should have sold it. I mean, if anyone's got any more questions, not much I can do. Charity is an integral part of Islam. Charity is an integral part of Islam. But here's the point. When I mentioned to you that the Prophet, peace be upon him, he said that the stronger believer is more beloved to God than the weak one. That's what we should be imparting, and that's what we should be teaching. When the market prices rise and fall, but guess what? When I walk into Tesco today, the coffee that now they can buy for 1/10 of the price isn't cut down by 10, right? It's still the same cost. So there's something going on here. There's a huge profit margin that for them doesn't really decrease beyond a particular margin, but then it increases whenever and in Islam, part of the reason why we don't trade in interest and why we don't buy and sell, I can't remember now even though I did financial, I was starting to do the financial advice for a little while. If anyone here does remember, I left it, and please do tell me. Where people buy, they bet upon what the price of something will be beforehand. I can't remember what it's called. Future trade. Okay. So all of these factors, future trading isn't allowed in Islam. And these are factors that lead to these huge rises, because it's no longer just supply and demand. It's no longer just supply and demand. It's people sitting on their desk, playing about the money, and someone somewhere is suffering and seeing the consequences of that. So there's two factors here. There's justice and there's also education. And what we are not seeing, with respect to charities and with respect to companies that are dealing just in fair trade, and I see them as an extension of a charity, muddled up with business a little bit. Because the reason is that if I go into co-op, or if I go and I see something that's fair trade, and I see something that's organic, and I see something that's neither of those two things, fair trade is sometimes more expensive than organic, sometimes less expensive. That's a big deal. There's something wrong there. Why is that the case? Either the profit margins still too high with these companies that are selling the product, or these things aren't produced efficiently enough, and they're still focusing on handmade things, etc., etc. This is, again, I'm talking to an academic audience. These are just my thoughts about this. Now, what I'm going to say about that, regardless of you do your own research, is we need people to step up. That's what we need. We need people to step up. I have a friend who works for Tesco, now he's evil, but he was, really describing the pain that they would go, the excruciating pain that they go through in order to save 2 pence, in order to cut out this cost, in order to cut out that cost. And when you study the logistics, and it's a whole science, and you know what? Whole civilizations have risen and fallen based upon logistics, based upon just these manufacturing concepts. I would love to see for a new company that not only sold fair trade, but that educated the farmers and that got them to such a standard where they were competing. And I think it's very possible. I can't see why not. And many things, and now with the internet, and now with so many other options and so many other ways of doing things, and many things that you would say were impossible, someone did it before you. And when it was being done, everyone thought it was impossible, but they proved that it could be done. And this whole, when the Prophet says that the hand that gives is better than the hand that receives, this has to be sustainable. Yes, it's good that now big companies are coming in and things are getting cheaper and cheaper, but do we want to leave it to them? Because justice is not about begging, please treat me fairly. Justice isn't about that. Justice is about being strong enough to be able to compete within the market. And are these farmers just being utilised? Yeah. Are they just being utilised, or are they being taught? Does that make sense? Are they just being utilised, or are they being taught? And obviously different companies are going to do different things, but I would love to see someone from this room take it upon themselves as a form of jihad, the big J word, right? To go and study how this is done and make for themselves a career. Make for themselves a career. We now have, you've probably heard of Islamic Relief, £18 million plus turnover yearly. That's not even worldwide. Now at the time that was an amazing model. Give money, give you a bit of a guilt trip, take your money, and they go and feed people. Now every other person's coming up with a charity, and they're all suffering. And you know, they're not making as much as they could do, and they're not working efficiently, etc. It's outdated. If you're not providing value, why is it? Because remember I said an tarad, it has to be that both parties consent. I would much rather spend less money than more money. Doesn't that make sense? So it has to be in my interest to buy fair trade. That's only fair. And it's only, because fair trade has to be fair for everyone, right? And it has to be sustainable. If I go through rough times, if I'm unemployed, but I stop buying fair trade now, or I stop eating, I'm one of those people that buys organic food regardless of how much it costs, and if we can't afford to buy more, eat less. Yeah? Because the nutritional value within organic food is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times of, you know, of rat meat, you know, looking like chicken, right? Much more. So even if you eat half of it, you're probably getting 4 times the nutrition. Go hungry, it doesn't matter if you're after the nutrition. So I don't have a problem with spending more money, but it has to be fair on all parties. I would love for someone here to take that motto, truly, to take that motto, and to teach these people. Now, I'm not an expert in fair trade, but I'm just giving you a slant where, in order for justice, you know, because business is about making money. That's what business is about. And these companies are never going to start doing fair trade unless they can figure out how to make money out of it. Right? So how is it that we can help more than that? How can we as Muslims help much more than that? There's so many examples within the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, so many. Sometimes it would just be a charity. Sometimes it would just be a charity. But sometimes, in Islam we have this thing, and actually English and Western law, and this thing called trust. Now if you study trust law in the UK, for example, that I do remember from where I studied, it's not actually what we in Islam call trust. It's called a waqf. Now, for example, just to give you an example, it used to be the case, we're talking here now about 150 years after Hijrah, so 1,200 years ago. Bear that in mind, okay? 1,200 years of, you know, no cars, no internet, nothing, no mobile phones. You used to have, within the Muslim Empire, hospitals, where you would walk into that hospital and they would ask you to shower, get rid of all the germs that you walked in with, give you new clothes, you'd sit down, you'd have your treatment. Within the hospital, there is a river. Within the hospital, there are, because they realize that, you know, the psychological effect on getting better. When you're finished, they would say to you, in order to fully recover, you need 3 weeks service. How much do you earn a month? Oh, I earn 2,000, 3,000. Okay, you earn 3,000? Well, we need you to take 3 weeks off. Here's 3 weeks worth of your wage. Please don't work because you have wasted our time. Take it and live for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And it was sustainable. This didn't happen for a week or two. This was sustainable. They used to have roaming ambulances that consisted of 150 camels, right? With you know, and it was a caravan, and not just, you know, like GPs roaming around. No, eye specialists, gut specialists. I'm ignorant with regards to all the medics are laughing, right? And we have different faculties within the hospital travelling, okay, and it was sustainable. Why was it sustainable? Because of this thing called wealth. And I'm only mentioning this as an example. And it would still work today, by the way. Now, how does this example work? Someone would donate, but instead of donating £2 extra every time I buy some olive oil, right, I would be donating for a plot of land, okay, and that would be now a trust, and like a foundation, right, and everything that was earned from that would subsidise or would pay for the for this hospital, etc. This is a solution that can only come around if you understand that, first of all, it has to be sustainable. Secondly, you have to educate the people you're helping. There's a story, we read this in Surah Al-Kahf, the chapter of the cave, every Friday. We're told 4 stories in this chapter. One of them is about a man called Dhul-Qarnayn. He was a leader, or an emperor, and he owned, under his command, was most of the East and West. And he comes by people who we now know, we don't know them, but we know about them, who were tormented by these people called Gog and Magog. And the story is fascinating, because God's trying to teach us what a just ruler does. This man was very just, and God's telling us what this just ruler did in order to help these people. So they say that these people keep attacking us, and we can't ward them off, these Gog and Magog. So what does he say? Does he say, give me some money and I'll do it for you? He doesn't say that. Now he has a huge army. Does he say, alright, you guys sit down and I'll bring my army and we'll set up the wall for you? He doesn't do that either. He does this thing whereby he would say, and they said, we'll pay you and we'll do this and this. No, I don't need any of that. Bring your people and bring for me bronze or steel, metal. And then he taught them how to use these resources to make the wall. He taught them how to use these resources to make the wall. And the scholars up and down the ages have said this is what a just Muslim does when he has power. So he doesn't just pay charity like that, because charity, you'll need that again and again and again. It has to be sustainable. But he does charity, and we in Islam believe that charity isn't even a smile. Charity is that you educate someone. Charity is anything you do for the sake of God that does not go against that does not go against anything that He's prohibited. That's charity this time. So actually, he was doing the biggest form of charity. He's educating the people how to look after themselves. These people, why do you think they're under attack? Probably because Gog and Magog knew how to work as a team, and these people were still working, fighting amongst themselves. Now all of them are helping each other to build this wall against this invader. He's taught them a skill. He's taught them how to work as a team. He's taught them how to work with steel, work with iron. He's taught them how to do all of these things. It's really, really important that we just move from the reactive, poor me, people aren't giving me enough money, and move into, how can you actually do it? One of the things, when you compare Tesco's with any convenience store, I'm really glad that Tesco's exists, because it's so much cheaper. Do you understand? There's a benefit in it. Now, I'm very sad for the hundreds and thousands of shopkeepers, of whom many were uncles and aunts of friends. Yeah. But guess what? Competition makes things higher quality. And Islam does not come to negate competition. It doesn't. I remember in Glasgow, where I grew up, walking and having to check the sell-by date before walking out the corner shop. Because if it was old and I walked out after having bought it, I wasn't going to get my money back. Right? And Tesco's and Asda's and all of that didn't exist in the same way. Now everyone's stepped up their game, because of competition. So Islam does not negate competition. I'm sure fair trade doesn't either. But we have to get to a point where we're educating people, and we're doing more than just paying more money out of our pockets in order for this to be sustainable. Yeah? Islam does not say no competition, and it does not say, by the way, I only have to pay charity, you know, once, even zakat, which is 2.5%, once I'm above the poverty line. So I can't ask a student who's in debt and who's got less than the minimum amount, you know, to pay zakat. Allah hasn't asked them of that. So yes, if you can buy fair trade as a form of charity, then do so, because obviously it's going to help people, but it's not sustainable. So I hope and pray to God that someone from this room, yeah, will honour us by finding a solution that is sustainable and by doing the work. And it's very, very doable. And we have the networks. If you go to somewhere like Islamic Relief, they have the people on the ground. They know, the government ministers, etc., etc. It's laid out. It just needs someone with a creative and diligent mind to be able to implement something like this. I hope I've not disappointed anyone. This is an academic environment, so criticism is I'm open to that. That's not a problem. Any questions, comments, probably you can answer them. But that's me.
So, would anyone like to ask any questions?
I'm not slating fair trade at all. I hope that that's understood yet. But I'm just saying, do that for now because that's the only thing we have. But it needs to be another step. I mentioned Islamic finance. One of the things that they do in the Bank of Islam, IBB, Islamic Bank of Britain, is that they have this thing, and I'm not even going to explain it because it won't make sense, because it doesn't make sense. Where you go and you borrow £20,000 from them, and after 4 years you owe them 24,000 or 25,000, depending upon the market price of commodities. What they do is they buy from you. Right? They take your £20,000 and they say, oh, we've just bought bronze at this price, and we're going to sell it back to you at 24,000. And it's very shoddy in terms of the Islamic, this Islamicness is very, very shoddy. And many of these institutes, the people that gave the fatwa, the people that did the ijtihad, the people that gave the opinion that this is okay, did so with the condition that after 2 years you need to find an alternative. You need to move on. Okay? So whether fair trade moves and grows and does these things, taking the next step, or whether it remains and we find another step, we progress things, that's no problem. But right now, yes, we follow what we've got, and it's the best that's out there right now. We need to find something better. We need to create it. Yeah, we need to create it. We already have enough doctors, we have enough engineers, right? We don't have enough hypnotherapists. Right? We don't have enough people that go into this field of, honestly, it's a science. It's an absolute science. Yes? Is that no? Was it that bad a talk? No question, no comments?
I would want to make a comment. I think that's exactly what I've felt as well, that there is really no one that is actually in this field at all, and that's exactly what the aim of this was, to inspire someone to be creative, to think of better, again, like nothing like better, but to think of better long-term solutions, and whilst there isn't anything there, do what is the alternative.
It's important for this not to become a crutch. Okay? There's even Islamic Relief, what they do now when they give people, they employ this concept of microfinance. They will give someone money and they'll say to them, but you always it. Right? You always it. And we'll teach you how to run up and set up and run a business. And we expect this after 5 years. Yeah? And it's perfect, because now they've turned into a lock structure, into a trust. Yeah? It's something that's sustainable, and it's not a crutch, because the person's they've got to feed themselves. No questions? I look forward to it. Okay. Does that work? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Papa. So hopefully, after hearing these talks, all of you are feeling inspired, and you want to be the change, and you want to do something to change the situation that the world is in. So we've got the next speaker, Mohammed Zaman, who is from Made in Europe, which is a new organisation with new initiative to inspire young people to be the change and make a difference. So,
Assalamu alaikum everyone. First of all, thank you to FOSIS and especially to Sister Saha for organising this event and calling us, all of us over here to be part of the audience, and also us who are the speakers over here. So thank you, FOSIS West and Wales. Now, my name is Imam, and I'm one of the campaigns officers at MAB Europe. Now, for those of you who don't know about MAB, and that probably would be most of you, MAB is the Muslim Agency for Development Education. We're a relatively young organisation. We were set up in 2009 by a group of people who had worked both in mainstream development organisations and also in the Muslim charity sector. And they felt that there is something that is lacking within the Muslim charity sector, which is campaigning. We are very good at, if there's, if there's a natural disaster anywhere, they'll go in there, they'll raise funds, they'll help the people over there, they'll help in the rehabilitation efforts. But there is no organisation, no Muslim charity based in the UK that would actually campaign on issues, fundamental issues. For example, let's think about mainstream organisations, Oxfam, Save the Children. Yes, they'll go out there, they'll do development work, they'll deliver aid, but they also campaign on issues, for example, let's say climate change, which is one of the fundamental reasons for natural disasters. Muslim organisations don't do that. So in 2009, this group of people, they said, you know what, we have the expertise, so why don't we do this? Instead of just saying that we've got a problem, be the change, do something about it. So MAB was set up in 2009 purely as a campaigning organisation, and we work primarily within the Muslim community in Britain, again because that's where the gap was, and we specifically focus on young Muslims, people like you. And the reason we do that is that we want young British Muslims and European Muslims to be a part of the, let's say, global solution to problems such as global poverty and injustice, which is one of the reasons why all of us are over here, because of trade injustices, and fair trade is something that is a solution, a potential solution for a problem like that. Another thing that we do is we really want young people, young Muslims, to engage with these issues, whether it's to raising awareness in your own communities, whether it's to volunteering, whether it's through, you might be passionate about it enough to go and do a degree in international development. We want people like you to be involved in those efforts. And we also provide campaigns training to young Muslims, and the campaigns training on fair trade, which will be provided in Cardiff on Saturday, we are also a part of that. So one of the campaigns, as a campaigning organisation, there are many different initiatives that we are involved in, and one of the campaigns that we're running at the moment is Fair Trade in Islam, Halal and Tayyib. And I'm responsible for running that campaign at the London office, and we now very recently established an office in Birmingham, and one of the campaigns officers over there is running the campaign from Birmingham. Very, very briefly, what this campaign is about, it's a joint campaign between MAB Europe and Zaytoun. There are two aims of this campaign. The first aim is to raise awareness about fair trade in the Muslim community, about trade justice, ethical consumption. Raise awareness in the Muslim community, get Muslims to go out there, buy more fair trade products. That's the first aim. The second aim is the work that we do with Zaytoun, which is to help Palestinian producers earn a dignified and sustainable living for themselves and for their families. I mean, that's something that Arte from Zaytoun will talk about later on. I don't really want to get into that. What I really want to do is talk about fair trade and why MAB Europe is running a campaign on fair trade. Now, we've heard about fair trade from Jen, so I don't need to get into that. We've heard about trade justice, the principles of trade justice in Islam from Abdelrahman Mussa. I don't want to get into that. What I want to do is talk about fair trade in a very specific context, which is fair trade and the Muslim community in Britain. Now, for example, Jenny at the beginning, she had the fair trade logo up there, and she was saying, do you guys know what this is about? I was at a fair trade supporters conference just a couple of months ago in London, and one of the speakers over there said that recent surveys that they had done indicated that more than 70% of adult British population knew what the fair trade logo was, knew what it stood for, and out of the more than 70% of people who recognized it, more than 90% of people viewed it as a trusted brand. Now, I just want to ask you, think about the Muslim community in Britain. If we went out to the Muslim community and said, here's the fair trade logo, do you know what this is? Do you think 70% of the British Muslim community would say, yes, we know what this stands for. Yes, we know the principles of fair trade. I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think it would be 70%. I mean, at Made in Europe, we are, in London, our offices are in the London Muslim Centre, which is the same complex as the East London Mosque. Just last week, we were over there with our fair trade volunteers down in the main concourse. We had a fair trade store. We had our fair trade leaflets. We were talking about fair trade. We had Zaytoon products over there. We were there for about 3 hours, and more than 100 people came up to us to take our leaflets, talk about fair trade, and also talk about Zaytoon. Now, we did a sort of a very unscientific and informal survey. People who came up to us, we asked them, we showed them the fair trade symbol, and we said, do you recognize this? Most people didn't. Those who did recognize it said, yes, I know the symbol. It's just another brand like Nike or Apple, isn't it? Some people said, yeah, I've seen that before. It's got something to do with organic farming, hasn't it? I mean, obviously there were people who knew what fair trade was, what it stood for, but most people didn't. And that is the reason why Made in Europe is involved in fair trade. I'll give you another statistic, another example. Just like Bristol is a fair trade city, places of worship can be fair trade places of worship. You can have a fair trade mosque. In the UK, I don't know the exact numbers, but at least 6,000 to 7,000 churches are fair trade churches. They're certified. The process is very simple. Any event that that place of worship is holding, that it's responsible for, and if they're serving tea, coffee, or biscuit, that has to be fair trade. That's the first thing. Secondly, they have to try and have more fair trade products at those events. And thirdly, during fair trade fortnight or during the year, they have to hold events to educate the community about fair trade. So it's as simple as that. We have 6,000 to 7,000 churches, at least in the UK, which have the fair trade certification. There are about just over 400 synagogues in the UK, and at least 50 out of those 400 have now got the fair trade status. We have just under 1,000 registered mosques in the UK. Do you know how many mosques have the fair trade certification? No, it's better than 1. We now have 3. So we have 3 mosques out of nearly 1,000. I mean, this is a shocking lack of interest that is shown in fair trade by the Muslim community in Britain. And that is the reason why Made in Europe is involved in this campaign. So, the campaign that we're running, as I said, it's a joint campaign with Zaytoon. And what it means to be a part of this campaign for us is that it's not something that is our campaign. It's not a Made in Europe thing. Similarly, it's not just a FOSIS thing over here. This is something that is a part of a bigger movement. It's not an ego thing for us that, oh, look at us, we went out there and, we now have more shops stocking Zaytun products or fair trade products. It's not a thing of we now have more mosques becoming fair trade certified because of Made in Europe. The thing is to build up a network of Muslim individuals and businesses, organizations like FOSIS, for example, to be a part of this campaign where we can mutually depend on each other, where we can work with each other in changing our lifestyles and bringing the Muslim community closer to the Quranic teachings and the prophetic teachings on trade justice, on ethical consumption, on fair trade. Now, I must say that, living in this, let's say, industrialized global world, it is very difficult for us to say that, anything and everything I do, or anything that I consume, anything that I buy, will be ethically traded. Will have the principles of trade justice behind it. That is very, very difficult. But we have to take the first step. Like Brother Abdelrahman Mussa, he was talking about fair trade and critically analysing it. And that's great. There are things that we have to see that fair trade is not a perfect system. But then we also have to look at it from the other point of view. The global markets, the global system that we have in the world today, that is not something that came about in just one day. It took decades, it took centuries for that to happen. Similarly with fair trade, it's a new initiative, and it is growing at an incredible rate. But it is, let's say, the first step. It is the first step, and we have to take that first step. We have to, we can't say, because this is not perfect, I'm not going to be a part of it. And as Abdelrahman Mussa was saying that, that this is what we have at the moment, so we should support it. So the thing is, take that first step. Because if we wait for something that is perfect, that is completely unflawed, that is not going to happen. Change will happen, but it will happen gradually. And we know that fair trade works. It's not that fair trade doesn't work. But fair trade only works when we support it. When we go out there and we say, yes, I will buy fair trade products. And that is what we're trying to encourage at Made in Europe. We have recruited volunteers. They're going out in the British Muslim community. They're saying, this is what fair trade is about. They're giving out leaflets. They're going to businesses and saying, why are you not giving your consumers that choice of having fair trade products? Why is it that we have to go to other shops to buy fair trade products? Why aren't you giving us that option? They're going to mosques. They're liaising with them and saying, why is it that a faith that puts so much emphasis on, places so much emphasis on fairness, on morality, on ethics, why is it that only 3 mosques have the fair trade status? Why are we not, as a Muslim community, why are we not supporting it? Individuals are, but not as a community. So this is what we're doing. And I said, fair trade works. It only works when we support it. When we go out there and demand our businesses that they stop fair trade products. When we meet with community leaders and we go to mosques and say, you should be supporting this because this is what we have at the moment. You should be supporting it. And the last thing I'd like to say is that fair trade is not a fashionable fad. It is not a leftist, liberal, hippie thing to do. It is the right thing to do, it is the moral thing to do, and it's the Islamic thing to do. Thank you. Any questions?
I would also say, please do check out Made in Europe. They were actually the organisation that did inspire me. I went to a campaign training and I was really pleasantly surprised that there is actually an organisation that does care about this and they do want to make that small step, even if it's the smallest step. So please do contact Brother Mohammed and find out more information. I hope everyone's okay so far. I'm just going to introduce the next speaker, Brother Chaudhry. He is a co-founder and director of Zaytun. I I know that Brother Mohammed mentioned Zaytun, which is the... Does anyone remember what it is? What Zaytun?
If I don't make it,
Yes. Well done, yay. So, let's see if anyone's listening. Okay, and he did his Masters in Conflict and Development, founded Zaytun in 2004, and he's a Director and CEO of Diversity and Ability, a social enterprise designed to support disabled adults. I just want to also say that personally, speaking to him, he is quite inspirational, and he is someone that really wants to make change, and he's struggled many years to actually establish Zaytun. And he's gone through trying to help Palestine through the marches and through Interpol and all these other charities, and he actually found that what he's doing now, which is supporting the farmers and supporting the economy, is one of the best things that we can do if we really do want to help. Anyway, I'm not going to speak more because I'm sure you can explain it better, and it's a pleasure to introduce you. Thank you.
Can you all hear me okay? Okay, I'm going to start by talking and hopefully listening and asking you some awesome questions as well. We've been here for a while and you've all been really fantastic. You've been listening to lots of speakers, and it's quite new stuff that we're talking about, and hopefully old stuff for some of you. But it's a lot of listening. So towards the end of the evening, so let's try and interact as much as we can. I'm going to tell you hopefully a story about Zaytun and Palestine, and a story about trade justice, and a story about people. And hopefully you'll stay with me on that journey and take from today a connection to those people. But I'm going to ask you all a question. Let's ask a few questions. Has anyone here been to Palestine? Okay. Does anyone here want to go to Palestine? Okay. Well, I won't talk about it, but look at our website and ask me afterwards in the question time. Then we take tour groups to Palestine and to do harvesting, picking, and spending time there, and learning about the occupation, which I strongly recommend. If it's not with us, one day, inshallah, go and see for yourself. All right. A question. When we think of Palestine, what do we think? Anyone? And please, this is your evening too, so get involved. Okay, so question. When we think of Palestine, what do we think?
War.
War?
Occupation.
Occupation?
Al-Aqsa.
Al-Aqsa?
Oppression.
Oppression? So, over here? Don't be afraid, honestly, you're not friends. Destruction. Okay, so we're hearing destruction, we hear occupation, we hear loss, we hear about war, Al-Aqsa. We hear a lot of things, but we very rarely hear things amongst our own community about positiveness, about our own victories, our own connections, and about Palestine's dignity. And we very rarely talk about it in those terms. We talk about victims, and that's understandable. A generation of us have grown up with Palestine, watching nothing but victims. We see the pain, we see the torture, we see the loss, and we see families. But how do we start to talk about positive things? How do we start talking about rebuilding? How do Palestinians start talking about rebuilding and connecting? And we who don't go through oppression or occupation can't talk about those victories. And how do we facilitate those victories? It's a big challenge. It's not easy for any of us. We don't live these things, and that's for a good reason. But how do we connect? Palestine has a history of farmers, communities. 69% of Palestinians are farmers. And what they farm is olive oil. In fact, it's the oldest place in the world where humans cultivate olive trees. The oldest olive trees in the world are in Palestine. and it's the first place where humans learnt about it. Yes, you see it in Italy, and you see it in Greece, but that's because the Romans occupied Palestine, another occupation. So a long time ago, and they learnt about it. But you will not find trees anywhere in Italy or Spain or Greece as old as Palestinian olive trees. But how come we don't know about it? How come we don't talk about it? And that was our challenge, to be able to connect and educate us as consumers about Palestinian heritage. Palestinians every day are defying the occupation. Every day they're going past the wall, every day they face checkpoints, and every day their children go to school, knowing that there still may not be a future for them. So it's not Palestinians that really need empowering, it's us. It's us trying to understand that connection. But it's not easy. Zaytoon was started in 2004. Has anyone here heard of Zaytoon? Can we get a rough show of hands? Good, alright. Great, okay, thank you. We started in 2004. It was just a few of us. We haven't got a lot of time to tell you the entire story, so I'll go as quick as I can. But like you guys, I used to sit and watch the news and feel a bit lost. In 2001, I decided to go to Palestine to try and see for myself, and we got involved with a group called the International Solidarity Movement. We were very involved in trying to monitor soldiers, checkpoints, trying to stop them where we could, and often we couldn't, and mostly we just used to witness things. But what we didn't actually get to do was look at anything long term. Yes, there was oppression, yes, we were writing about it, but we didn't ourselves really connect to what Palestinians themselves were saying. And what Palestinians were saying is that we are defied by this occupation. We're defied, our entire dignity and history is trapped. It's just 64 years. When here we are talking about a land struggle and a connection to our families, our ancestors, to trees that go back thousands of years. So why do you in the UK, or in Scotland, or Wales, not talk about that? Why are we just victims? And Mohammed talked about it earlier, and I'm going to touch on those, the idea of what are we as a community in the UK, and how do we connect? What does 2.6 million Muslims look like when it wants to support Palestine? What does 2.6 million Muslims look like when it buys fair trade dates instead of dates from settlements? It looks strong, it looks confident, and it presents positive stories. It offers a victory. But how do we make that easy? And that's the trick for all of us. So 2004, when we first started, I'd contact shops and I'd go to them and say, hey look, we're selling Zaytoon, Palestinian olive oil. We didn't have the fair trade mark, that was a mile away. And so the first thing shops would say to me is, oh wow, Palestinian olive oil. You know, when did Palestinians first start selling olive oil? And my answer was about 3,000 years ago. and that's the nature of occupation. It's the nature of theft. It steals not just your land, it steals your identity and your future. So we realised we had to really educate people about Palestine, its heritage, its history. It wasn't easy. We were contacting shops. We went to the Fair Trade Foundation in 2005. I met with two wonderful very people who are still involved, John Arnold, and Harry. And at the time, the foundation hadn't looked at a product in an existing conflict zone. They'd never seen, how do we get a fair trade mark in a place where the gateway changes at each point? At each point, there are checkpoints. At each point, there's a change of hands. At each point, there's intervention. How do you get a fair trade audit, which is something that Jane had mentioned earlier, when things are changing all the time? There's never been a fair trade mark for an olive oil. There's never been a fair trade mark for something from Palestine, and powerfully, there's never been a fair trade mark for something in an existing conflict zone. So naturally, the four of us, we were quite challenged by this. And we knew very little about olive oil, we knew very little about fair trade, we knew what we saw in Palestine, and we knew there was an emergency. But we'd never done business before, none of us. I can tell you that we made a lot of mistakes. And what we did realise that war was coming. Now you've all seen pictures of the war. Those of you who haven't been to Palestine know, but you've all seen there's an apartheid war. You all understand that. Okay. Now the war is called lots of things. For some people it's called separation barrier. For some people it's called separation fence. Some people call it occupation wall. Some people call it apartheid wall. It's up to you to decide what you call it and how you connect to it. But I just want to explain something very, very quickly about fair trade and why it's so urgent in Palestine. As I said, 60% of Palestinians are connected to farming. Now, if they all can't get past the wall, or entire villages are trapped behind the wall, then how do they trade? How do they bring their product past the wall? If the wall was about separating brothers from their sisters and families from each other, it would be a problem, because you'd miss them. But this isn't about separating families from each other. This is about slow death. This is about strangulation, where communities cannot live. And so a domestic market where farmers used to sell their products around the Middle East, to Jordan, to other parts of Palestine, disappeared. There was no way they could move the product. So the urgency became that there had to be an international market that would be able to buy Palestinian olive oil, support these farmers. But how do we do that? And that was a challenge for us as student volunteers. It was a big challenge, and we learned a lot on the way, and there's more to that story than the time I've got with you. But from taking on that challenge, we were able to support farmers to get past the wall. In fact, we were in a room not much bigger than this with a group of farmers where we first talked about the idea of selling olive oil past the wall, past the checkpoints, past the occupation. And the mayor of the village, who was there, and it was a village that was about to lose 85% of its olive trees, was going to be devastated. When a village loses 85% of its olive trees, this was a Byzantine village, a very beautiful old Byzantine village. And when it loses that many olive trees, it stops being a village. It becomes another refugee problem, for the largest refugee problem the world already has. So, naturally, when we talk about this new great idea of fair trade and getting a fair trade mark, and selling olive oil past the wall, raising an income for the villages to stay, and maybe even do more than that, raise an income so that we can keep the schools going. The mayor asked a very simple question. He said, have you ever sold olive oil before? And I said, no. And then he said, could you guarantee you could bypass the wall? And I said, no. So at that point they walked out. Naturally so, right? What do you do if you hear things that don't sound convincing to you? You walk out. You should. Why stick around for something that doesn't add up? It was devastating because it was a great idea, and we felt that the wall was growing. We saw more wall than that village did because we could bypass the checkpoints. Not easily, but we could. There is an apartheid situation. It's easier for an English person with a white English person to move past the checkpoints than it is for me. But it's easier for me than it is for a lot of Palestinians. It is an apartheid situation. But we realised that we've got to come back with some answers. We went to the Fair Trade Foundation and said, this is our plan, this is what we want to do. They looked incredulous that we were going to take this on. But we did it. We went back the following year. We said, we've contacted supermarkets, this is our challenge. We created a market. In fact, we've got so many people interested, they want to buy it and they want to help fly some of you farmers over to tell the story. That's a very quick way of telling a story that's been going on for 9 years. So what does Zaytoon look like now? Does it look like 10 farmers or one village that was losing 85% of its trees? That village is still there now. It stayed, it's Budrus. There's a movie about it, go and check it out, it's a really good film. But it's actually not one village. Zaytoon is now 25 villages. It's 6,000 families. And they all get to trade with justice and a sense of dignity and pride that every farmer anywhere else in the world should be entitled to. And they do that through the support of youth. They do that through the support of buying fair trade, by paying the social premium, by knowing that you're trading in justice, by knowing that you're not just another person pretending that it's all okay, that slavery isn't a word that's part of your life. So I'm really proud of those things. I'm really excited that we got this far. And I can tell you more one day. It will be a book, I hope, inshallah, and we'll have funding to tell that story more, with recipes and history and stories written by women about their food, their folklore, their traditions. In fact, we have 25 co-ops that work with Zaytoon. We have women's co-ops that just make za'atar, which is us outside. We have date farmers with just one co-op that's able to employ Palestinians to work in their co-op to produce dates instead of being forced to work in slave labour, so that we can all have cheap Israeli dates from settlements. The difference is happening. It's happening around us. I know it's a passionate situation, and I know it's a story that we all feel quite lost by. But when there are victories, do we recognise them? Do we grasp them? Do we connect? And those opportunities are all around us. Palestinians are asking us that all the time. I think, I'm not a scholar and I won't pretend to be, but I've always as a young boy liked the idea of when we connect, when we have our ummah, when we connect to each other, that we stand strong, and we make our numbers mean something. We are 2.6 million strong. We need to remember that. We need to know that, not just Ramadan, but how we buy, that the decisions we make are part of the people we connect to, and that we play that role. I'm really, happy and fortunate to have played a small part in Palestinians being able to reach the UK. And I know that you'll all play a small part, hopefully inshallah, after today. But I want to share one thing as well, and I'm here to talk about trade justice with MAB and really support the work that MAB are trying to do to make this story as easy as possible for all of us to get behind. No one has to do everything. They have to do something. And it's just that connection that we make to each other and to Palestinians. The thing I'm most proud of when I hold a bottle of Zaytoon is, and for me, I'm holding resistance. And that's an important word. We hear it a lot. It conjures up all sorts of things for some people. Jihad for others. What does that mean? It's a different word for different people. Scary word for some people. And so is resistance. But not for me. For me, resistance is every time I hold a bottle of oil, I know there's a family that resisted, that stood firm, Samud, steadfast against the occupation. It stayed on its land against the occupation, and it resisted, and it kept its dignity. And every time someone buys a bottle of Zaytoon or fair trade products, whatever it is, they're supporting that dignity. The thing I'm most proud of, actually, I have to say, and I've said this at the foundation, sorry, Fair Trade Foundation, actually isn't the Organic Food Awards, and Zaytoon and Palestine's been winning awards for that, for taste, Not just war and devastation, but taste. Who thought that would happen? So we're winning awards for Organic Food Awards and taste, and the Soil Association. Those marks are all wonderful, you can see them on the bottle. But the mark I'm most proud of, it isn't the fair trade mark, which would surprise me. It's actually a little mark at the back. It says product of Palestine. It means it's a place, and it's real, and it's there. And inshallah, you're all connecting to it. So thank you. I would really like some questions if you have time. Is there time for questions? Yeah? Please ask whatever. This is a moment, because I don't know how often I'll get to meet many of you. Ask whatever questions. If you're cynical, ask questions about it. Deal with that. It's a good time. I'll take whatever questions and inshallah answer as many as I can.
Thank you for being involved with Zaytoon and everyone who's been involved with Zaytoon. So one quick question. Zaytoon products are coming from Palestine as well as other territories within the occupied region. Now, so are we like supporting occupation by buying, for example, your bits or your products?
Depends on how you define it, but I'll illustrate. I think you're referring to oil from Galilee, am I right? Or are you just saying, because that's the only product that comes from Israel itself?
I'm referring to, for example, say products from Zaytun, but those which are made also in like occupied territories of Palestine. So does that benefit Palestine, sorry, Israel as well, in a way, like for example, in terms of money?
Okay, so I just want to be clear. Okay, let me try and open it up to the floor, because it's a good question. Brother's asking is, can I paraphrase? Brother's asking is, does supporting Zaytun help support the occupation? Is that in a nutshell? Okay, well, it's a really powerful question. And I'm really grateful for that question, because if I don't get to answer that question, it can happen in closed circles, which is even more unfortunate and unfair to farmers. So I'm going to use this floor, and thank you for asking that question. It's not an easy question to ask me, I don't think, for a lot of people. So let's use this moment. Okay, so the only port that Palestine has is in Gaza. The rest of the place is entirely locked down by 600 checkpoints, potentially. So that makes it quite hard. So we have to use ports to get the product onto ships. Those ports we are working with 20%, actually, just to clarify, 20% of Israeli society is made up of 1948 resident Palestinians. Are you all aware of that? Yeah? Okay. So there are Palestinians who live in the Negev, there are also Palestinians who live in Jerusalem, and there are Palestinians that live all over Jericho, and there are Palestinians that live in the Galilee. And those Palestinians are working with us to bring the product to a port. And we have to use an Israeli port. There's nothing we can do about that. The first thing we want to do is use a port in Palestine. But we don't have a choice. How do we get the product out? That's the sheer reality and the brutality of the occupation. That everything that goes into Palestine comes through Israeli profits. No group on earth, with the exception of Europe, buys more Israeli products than Palestinians. They're a captured economy. I'm going to illustrate a point. It is forbidden for Palestinians to manufacture bottles. The Israeli economy and the Israeli state says, for security reasons, Palestinians cannot manufacture bottles. Because if they manufacture bottles, then they'll turn them into Molotov cocktail factories. It's absurd, because the same Israeli state will say that, I'm here to talk about fair trade, but I will happily address these issues. The same Israeli state will also say that if you need bottles, then you can buy them from us. You can have as many as you want. There's no limit to how many you buy from us. So whether I made this bottle or I bought this bottle, if it was destined to be a Molotov cocktail, it makes no difference. It's an absurd rule about capturing a closed economy that cannot live. So what does Zaytun do about it? Well, we get our bottles from Spain, and we send them there. And we get them from solidarity groups in Italy, and we send them there. Because we don't have to buy those Israeli bottles, and we refuse to. Does that help? Now, you are going to see bottles from the Galilee, and this is really important. And this isn't armchair criticism. We should be asking this question. Why does Zaytun support farmers in the Galilee? Surely it's the Galilee. Anyone understand what I mean by that? The geography of that? No. Okay, so in the Galilee there are, again, 1948 resident Palestinians who never left. When millions of people left Palestine when they were in fear of losing their homes in 1948, when the massacres were happening, there were people in the Galilee that stayed. In Haifa, there are people in Palestinians who stayed. They didn't ask for 1948 residency, they didn't ask for Israel to take their land, they didn't ask to become Israeli citizens, but it happened. And so we support them. They're the first people to say support the West Bank, just as people in the West Bank are the first people to say support the Gazians. But we support the people in Galilee too. Why? Because they are restricted from a labour market. Yes, they are marginalised. They are facing an apartheid situation. Often you hear Palestine being compared to South Africa. And I often wonder why. South Africa was an apartheid situation. Israel is an apartheid situation. Palestine is a colonial occupation situation. It's not an apartheid situation. So we do support the people in Galilee as well, because they are not able to access markets either. But they're not our priority. It's just something that we choose to do. It's one of the reasons why we try and take people on tours, to go and see how this works, why we make these decisions, why it's important. Does that help? Right? That was a long way of answering the question, but I was trying to open it out to a lot of people who may or may not be sure. I can have a conversation with you about boycotts or after if you want to, but I don't think this is the space. We're really here to talk about fair trade. But if you want to talk about boycotts, how they work, how they don't work, you know, we can do that too. But is that helpful? All right. Any other questions? No, that was a long way of answering that. Does anyone want to know how we get the products out, or the tools, or how we do it?
Just one question you highlighted in terms of you take things from farmers who are well-fed and it's all fair trade. In terms of you're dealing with the people, the farmers and stuff who are doing the job nicely and they're like being treated fine. What about the farmers who are, for example, not dealing correctly or are under pressure so that they cannot, like whoever owns them is not treating them fine. So he's not getting paid because you're paying the owner or something and the farmers are working under them.
Oh, okay.
But the owner is not working fine with them. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, actually, okay, we only deal with co-ops. We will only deal with co-ops. So Zaytoon will not buy from private farmers, regardless of their situation. We have co-ops. There are 25 co-ops, and we work with the NGOs who campaign and help with quality standards and bottling, but we don't deal with an individual farmer. So if an individual farmer is wealthy and he employs lots of Palestinians, great, you know, that's fine. But unless he is coming under the fair trade audit, which means that they're working with the cooperative to measure who benefits how, then we don't work with them. It's not, because what will happen is you'll end up with a partisan situation where someone says, Atif, you bought from this family but you didn't buy from my family. How come? Why? Is it because he's Fatah? Is it because he's Hamas? Is it because... No, we'll work with anybody and everybody, providing they're willing to be part of a co-op that will distribute support and profits. Does that help?
It does help, but in terms of my question is more for the people who are like under oppression from someone else, and they're not being held by fair trade either because they're not meeting that co-op standard. You do any work in terms of support people to bring them up?
Okay, sorry, this is a question about capacity building. Yeah. How do you get two people to that level? Yeah. Okay, this is a really good example. That's probably a very good example. Our dates don't have the fair trade mark. So we say they're fairly traded. How do we know that? Well, we do tests and audits ourselves, which we share publicly. And we work, again, to formulate the co-ops. It goes back to the co-op thing. It takes time for some products to get the fair trade mark. One of the issues that we all have to understand is that do we help somebody when he's up and running, or do we work on the foundations to make it strong, to reach that level? It took Zaytoon and our farmers, working with FLOW, which is the Fair Trade Labelling Organisation, took us 5 years to get that mark. The Co-op Supermarket, which is a brilliant investor in fair trade, but they themselves, who I think should be applauded, but they themselves still have their journey to understand the realities of fair trade, I think. It's my opinion, and maybe Jenny will be different, but I would say that when they said to us, when you get the fair trade mark, we'll take you. Understandable, because they've got to reach reputation and management. At the same time, how do we suddenly get to that mark just like that? We have to develop capacity building. When we have to, the farmers, when they want to import internationally, they've got to have temperature control units. All these things, amazing things, which didn't exist in Palestine. We're not just talking about 60 years of occupation. We're talking about 60 years of disinvestment. We're talking about families that aren't going to compete easily against EU oil that's subsidised. Italian olive oil will be cheaper. Spanish olive oil will be cheaper. It will be supported by the EU. It will be blended from all over, Italy and Spain. And it won't. And Palestine will never get those subsidies. And how do we say to a village, oh, you've got to suddenly have these temperature control special units, you're going to have all these things. How do you get those things? So we have to build and support at the bottom and grow up. And that means capacity building. It's a really good question, and it's the right thing to do, but it takes time. So sometimes you're going to see things that you should probably get involved in, let's say fairly traded, and ask yourselves, what does that mean? The good thing about the Fair Trade Labelling organisation, which is FLOW, Fair Trade International, and the good thing about the Fair Trade Mark is it's asked a lot of those questions for you. But you should still keep asking them questions. Challenge them. But when you see things that are having fairly traded, ask what does that mean? How does it work? If these weren't from a co-op, I wouldn't agree with us using that term. If it wasn't for a co-op that was trying to employ Palestinians to not work in slave conditions in settlements, then I wouldn't use that term. Does that help? I'm really giving long answers to things, but I don't know how to answer, and how many people are bursting with questions. Is this all been useful today about fair trade and trade justice, more importantly? Do you see that you have a role? It may not be necessarily campaigning for fair trade. It may be small things like changing what you buy. Or it may be doing what Sister Saha does, organise a meeting like today. Or it may involve getting involved in MAB. All these things are accessible. They do work. If I really believed that we couldn't do it, then I would have just said to the farmers when they walked out, the job was done. And we knew so little about what we were doing. I can't explain that enough. You just have to be in my shoes. We knew so little about what we were taking on, how big the situation we were taking on. But we're all here, and more importantly, the farmers are still here. And that means the families are still here. So anyway, thank you all for listening, and please ask questions or... sorry.
Sorry, can I make a door for yourself and for the farmers?
Sure.
I don't know if the ladies can do that or not, but is that alright? We will make dua for the brother, the work that he's done. He's working with the family, the farmers at Hot Station, and those are not. Give him tough each.
Thank you for that. Dua means prayer.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have just one question. What is the name of the port that you use to get all the products from?
From Palestine?
Yeah.
We use Haifa.
Haifa.
Yeah. That's the majority. Haifa is where a large group of Palestinians live in that area. And it's just at the moment easier for us to use Haifa.
And do you pay something to Israel to get permissions or something like that?
Yeah, sadly have to. So we have to pay a loading fee to them.
Okay.
I don't know how we do it any other way. We did try and take it by land once, it just didn't work. We took it from Jordan, it didn't work. The products just came, we couldn't sell them once they reached the UK. The damage by land haulage is quite profound. Crates were just broken and we ended up, if we did it twice, I think we would have been bankrupt in those days. Just really quickly, it's worth saying this as well, that when we first put the call out for Zaytoon, we had no money. I just want to share this a little bit with you. Because you ever feel like you've got no money? Well, I do. You ever feel like you haven't got enough money with you as well? I do. And so sometimes you think, we're in a recession. Should we buy fair trade now? I mean, it costs more. When we are facing a recession, we lose jobs. And for many of us who used to go to Marks and Spencer's, I know most of you probably don't, but when we used to, or Sainsbury's, we find we're going to Aldi or Lidl. Yeah? But when we go to Lidl or Aldi, there'll be food there. Yes, it'll be cheaper. It won't be as fancy as what we like, especially at Christmas or Ramadan, but it'll be there. There'll be food there. The price of lentils, for example, in Bangladesh and rice has gone up by 400%. That means there is no food in certain places. That means that a staple food, not a luxury, but a staple, has become a luxury. Whatever happens fair trade-wise here that looks expensive is increased tenfold in the south. Whatever we deal with in a recession here is quadrupled, at least, if not more, in the south, where these, in parts of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, parts of India, parts of Palestine. So that's how we can connect. Fair trade is actually growing in a time of recession because people care. And we've made caring a lot easier than it used to be. So just keep caring. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for the outfit. Okay, so now we have the interactive part of today, and we said that we would not just come here and be, upset and depressed about how unfair the world is, but we're going to go away and we're going to do something. So we have this idea of everyone can make a pledge today. Just something really, really simple. So I think what is really easy to do is overwhelm yourself and say, I'm going to go out of this door and I'm only going to buy fair trade everything, and maybe you'll do that for half a day, then you'll stop, and then you'll just forget about it. But if instead you just make a realistic goal, if you buy bananas a lot, there's loads of fair trade bananas that you can buy. You can say, I'll buy fair trade bananas. If you bake a lot, you can get fair trade sugar. You say, I'll buy fair trade sugar. And so we have these pledge cards going around, and so if you just write down what your pledge is, because it's personal and it's what suits you, and if you just put it in your wallet whenever you go shopping, it's a reminder, because I don't think it's, a lot of the time, it's not that we don't care, it's just that we're forgetful. Although this is so terrible, we can easily get consumed in our own lives and our own problems, but if we have little reminders like this, maybe this is the first step to actively making an individual difference. And you tell your friends about it, you can say, for example, I promise to raise awareness about fair trade justice just through my Facebook status, because a lot of people don't know about it. We've learned a lot today, but a lot of people weren't here and they still probably don't know. Or I promise to mobilize my mosque or my community centre to sell fair trade products. I promise to begin the process of becoming a retailer of Zaytun goods so more people can support the Palestinians. I promise to buy fair trade chocolate, I want to be a member of the Zaytun product distribution in Bristol. You could start that in Bristol, or tea and coffee, which is really widely available, just little things like that. And I don't know if anyone has sort of ideas that everyone could benefit from, of fair trade goods that you could sort of buy from now on, or it doesn't have to be buying something, it can be raising awareness or mobilising a team.
Before we speak about any pledges or anything, I just want to open the floor. Does anyone have any ideas or any experiences that they want to share, or anything that they are actually doing? I think Louise is going to come down. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I actually met Sahar a few weeks ago and we were talking about other ideas that we can take forward. I'm from Christian Aid. I don't know if many of you know what Christian Aid is, but Christian Aid is sort of like Islamic relief. It's the aid agencies of the churches, but we work with all faiths and none. We work with many Muslim partners as well, trying to end poverty. We're involved in stuff like trade justice, and climate change campaigning and lobbying in the UK, as well as doing work overseas. But one of our big campaigns at the moment is on tax justice, which is a really important issue. I'm not going to talk a lot about it now, but we're going to try and possibly after Christmas sometime organise a workshop on it. And if anyone else was interested in finding out about this, they could. I've got a few leaflets I'm going to leave down the front here if anyone wants to pick one up, and some of the campaign action cards that we're taking at the moment. But basically this is about lobbying big multinational companies to try and change the way they act to do with paying taxes in the developing countries in which they work, and how this affects the global south and the poor. And so this is sort of all linked into fair trade. This is about trade justice as well. But it's sort of a different slant on it. So what I'll do is I'll just leave these up the front. If anyone wants to come and talk to me afterwards, you're welcome to as well. And just keep your eyes peeled because we're going to try and maybe organise some kind of multi-faith perspectives on trade or some kind of other event in the near future. So I just wanted to share that with you guys today. I'm doing an internship with youth and students this year, so I might be doing some other things as well at Bristol. So it'd be great to get involved with you guys.
Okay, thank you very much, Louise. We're looking forward to getting involved with that as well. Anyone else want to share anything at all? Any experiences? Any comments? Anything they've learnt? Anything they haven't learnt? Any expression? Okay. Does anyone want to talk about what they've pledged to do? Okay, just to remind you, so one of the things that we want to do is to actually start a team for Zaytoon to help distribute their products, and actually you've all heard about why it's so important. Who wants to be part of that team? Make a change. Yes, yes. Make sure you all write your names down. Where is the? And the laptop is here. So if you want to be part of that team, just write your name down. And there's other projects such as mobilising a mosque. Anyone want to be part of that? No? Not at all? I'll be part of that. Any other pledges anyone want to share? Even if it's the smallest thing. Okay, who has made a pledge? Put your hand up. Some of you haven't made a pledge. Is that for real? I'm going to ask again. Who has made a pledge? Okay. Who has not made a pledge? I know who you are, I can see you. I want you right now to make a pledge. Right now. You're going to do the smallest thing. You're going to start buying fair trade bananas. You're going to start buying fair trade chocolate. You're going to be involved in campaigns. It's the smallest thing. Come on. I know you can do it. Don't give me that. Okay, who has made a pledge? Put your hand up. I want to see every single hand up. Why? What are you girls in the middle? Simulations. Okay, yes?
I didn't actually want to say something.
Oh, sorry.
I was looking to say what I wanted to say. These are for you somehow. Okay. So just saying basically thank you for all the work that you have been doing. So I've been working with Sarah and I've seen that she's been working until she's been unwell, bedridden with this actual thing. And so just want to give you ultimately, I just want to thank everyone for coming today, because we know that as students and as people that are working, it is quite hard to take a time out of your day to think about something that's so important. And ultimately, the fact of the matter is, as Muslims, we really do believe that once you know something, you must act upon it. Because there's no use you coming here today, listening to all these inspiring talks from our political, the people that have been speaking to us already, and not taking it forward. Absolutely no point. And we do believe that as Muslims, once you know something, on the day of judgment, we do believe justice will be done. And if you have learned something and you haven't put it into practice, that will count against you. So all of the things that she has been saying, there are 3 different sheets. Please feel free at the end when we go outside and network with each other, put your name down, do something small. Don't be blind, don't be deaf, and don't be dumb. Do something small and really make a difference to the world. Because ultimately it could have been you that's in that situation, but luckily it's not. So how are you going to help those other people who are? Okay, so that was for Sarah, and these are for our other speakers as well. This is small. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you, but really, it's really nothing at all. And I think the biggest, really, I just want people to make a change. And I do want someone in this room to be that creative person who will actually contribute and actually study this. Because even when I was doing this, I was realizing how much I really don't know, and how much people don't know either, because you can't change something if you don't know it properly. You need to study it. I'm doing dentistry. I can't study trade law. I really can't. So I really want someone, and or if you can't, inspire someone else. That's what I really want. Small change, big change, anything at all. Is there anything else that anyone else wants to share? Anything? We're going to have feedback forms going around, so please give us feedback on how could you sort of improve this, how could you have been more inspired, what could be done better, what was good, and if we ever do this again, we could sort of repeat in anything. So it's really, really valuable to have your say. And we have a little a few words to sort of share with you guys before. By the way, before you leave, please, if you want to be a part of the Stay Tuned team, come down and put your name, mobile, and email, and you can sort of see how we'll contact everyone. And we just have I wouldn't call it a poem, but just a few words you can sort of go away, and hopefully that will stay with you. Okay, so. We're not here today to complain and criticize, because you have a choice and a voice to utilize. Don't be afraid to take the first step because you can't walk the mile, because the first step is a precious part of the journey to make mankind smile. So that's just like to inspire you guys, and it's okay. And oh yeah, we have thank you so much for everyone who's volunteered. We've had amazing volunteers bake desserts with fair trade ingredients, and they're outside. I know you had a lot in the way in, but hopefully there's still some more left. And we also have some Zaytun products. Like, you guys have heard the story from the heart and been inspired by it. So if you guys have some cash with you, buy some products. And they're amazing, by the way. So it's amazing to have such good products with such an important and good cause. So please, there's a table outside as well for that. And thank you so much to all the speakers for coming and inspiring us and teaching us more about the issue. And we really, really appreciate your time and effort that you put in. Thank you to all the committee members and everyone for coming, all your hard work. And thank you all the volunteers. Thank you so, so much. So thank you guys.
So thank you again to everyone, like really from the bottom of my heart, especially the speakers and everyone else. There's a lot of you that really volunteered, but a lot of people don't know about, and there's always the people behind the scenes as well. I just really want to thank all of you as well, and thank you. Thanks again. I'm filling the feedback for